Is Breece Hall worth a top 12 pick in Dynasty? We'll talk about that and more today on the Dynasty Newsletter. I'm your host, Adam Wilde, not joined by my co host, Chris Allen, today. He is on assignment, so he's not here to make fun of my voice like he did last week. So you're probably asking yourself, hey, didn't I just hear you talk about Breece Hall's value a couple weeks ago? Well, yes, lots has changed since then. And Breece Hall's value has had to have climbed, right? If not just for his performances over the last couple weeks, really everyone else's. So we've got Najee Harris was ahead of Breece Hall. And it's just been a little bit of Kenny Pickett. I mean, Kenny Pickett going to take some time. He was the 20th overall pick, right? Not the first, not the second. So it's not like he was drafted to be a premier quarterback right away. So it's not fair to make much judgment on Kenny Pickett right now for his production thus far in his NFL career. Obviously, keep your judgment from whatever you established prior to his NFL career and whatever your evaluation was at that point. But we don't know if he's the long-term answer, so that's tough for Najee Harris. You also have the injury, the Liz Frank injury that Najee Harris has been dealing with. He hasn't been questionable lately, so there's not been a lot of word on how he's handling that injury. But it is safe to say that it's probably still affecting him because it was affecting him 2 weeks ago. So I highly doubt a Liz Frank injury has stopped affecting him. Najee Harris is a bit of a buy low right now, in my opinion. There's just too much negativity around him for people to be really asking full value. I traded actually Breece Hall and a third-round pick for Najee Harris and a second-round pick the other day. Felt good about that for both sides. I think that's fair given current circumstances. And that was before Breece Hall blew up this last weekend. So you had Najee Harris falling behind him. You've also got your Dalvin Cooks, your Christian McCaffreys falling behind, your Cooper Kupps, all just due to age, Devontae Adams, leaving room in the top 12 for a back like Breece Hall to fall into the top 12. You also have Jonathan Taylor having a rough go of it to start the season. So pretty much all of our top running backs have just had a really, really tough time to start the year. So Breece Hall has been pretty much the shining light within the top running backs. There's not really another top running back to talk about getting value added. You've got Javonte Williams going down for the season for injury, and that's just going to be tough. He doesn't have he's not going to have a fifth year option. He was a second round pick, so he's not going to have the 5 years with the team. So losing a year is really tough for those young running backs. You only get about 4 years in their window, and that's if they start off great right out the gates like Breece Hall has. So Breece Hall's been playing a little bit over 50% of the snaps of late, and he's just been doing a ton with his opportunities. And now we've got 2 weeks in a row in which he's getting around 20 touches, and that's probably going to continue going forward. Probably should talk about Michael Carter in this situation because he's another young running back who's shown promise. He's not really going to go anywhere. He's not going to be in a Naheem Hines role. It's not. It's still going to have to be something like 60-40 with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, and Michael Carter still getting high value touches. So if people start to undervalue Michael Carter, it might just be the type of situation where it's an offense that's going to utilize their running backs heavily. And remember, it's Robert Saleh at the helm, so forever how long that lasts. But Robert Saleh is from San Francisco, and that is how they like to use their running backs. They prefer their 2 to 3 running back sets. So it's not really a situation where Michael Carter really has to take too much of a dip in value just because Breece Hall has been valued so highly. As a matter of fact, last week Michael Carter had 2 touchdowns in the week that I'm talking about. Breece Hall absolutely demolishing, arriving onto the scene in such a way that he gets almost the double bonus on DraftKings. So you don't have to really knock Michael Carter down too much, but you should put Breece Hall in your top 12 if you haven't already. When we had this discussion last time, I'm almost positive I had him at 14, and I think I'm going to have to squeeze him up to 11 with still room to grow if you wanted to trade for Breece Hall. It would be tough now. You might have to try to find a down week here or there to send those trade offers, but you could first get some value out of Breece Hall. The only issue is that there's a strong running back class coming next year, but hey, you could say that every year, right? Every year the next year is strong. Every year we have better quarterbacks, better wide receivers, better running backs coming out. So, I mean, do you want the bird in the hand? If you do, then you're trading for Breece Hall or you wait. So you don't want to send multiple firsts for Breece Hall or anything like that. You're better off just holding that value because first can't get hurt, right? So say that all the time. A player can get hurt. So if you're building for next year, just keep your firsts. They can't get hurt. They will 1,000% gain value as long as the world's still spinning. Your first is going to gain value. So I wouldn't try to trade too much in the way of first round picks. But if you could take a player and add a little bit, even Javonte Williams and something for Breece Hall, certainly something to explore. Now, on the flip side of that, Zach Wilson has returned. So the whole Jets offense is pretty much dynasty relevant because they're all young outside of Corey Davis, right? So Zach Wilson is back, and it's just been a tough go of it for Garrett Wilson 2 weeks in a row after starting the year 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, he's second in the NFL in targets. Zach Wilson comes back, and it's just like, I remember right before Garrett Wilson was leading the league in targets, we were talking on this show about how you're going to have to be patient with Garrett Wilson, still the wide receiver one in that class, ahead of Drake London, ahead of Treylon Burks, all those guys. Just like with Jameson Williams, but in a different scenario, you had to be patient with Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson said, to heck with that. I'm going to go ahead and lead the league in targets, and I'm just going to be an absolute stud right away. And then we get Zach Wilson back. So that's been tough for Garrett Wilson. And we're pretty much back to the situation where, well, yeah, you probably have to be patient with Garrett Wilson, but for a different reason now, because really it looks like Zach Wilson's probably not going to be long for starting quarterback in this league. And in that sense, it might not be long for Robert Saleh being a starting head coach in this league. So there's going to be a lot of turmoil. But it looks like Garrett Wilson, for any competent quarterback, is going to be the top target. So that's good news. If Zach Wilson does get replaced, even if he gets pulled for Joe Flacco again, we can expect solid production from Garrett Wilson. So just keep a mental image of Garrett Wilson leading the league in targets or second or whatever he was, and just try to remember that. Maybe write yourself a little sticky note every time you get frustrated with Garrett Wilson and you want to trade him. Just look at your sticky note and remember he has the potential to be one of the leaders in target share with any competent quarterback play. So you're going to have to grin your teeth and bear it, whatever the saying goes, and just wait for something to happen with the Jets, right? Whether Zach Wilson gets better, hey, let's just hope he gets better. We don't want to bring any negativity on anyone, but he's not getting it done now, right? So Garrett Wilson, just put a pin in it. Remember, he's fantastic, and still the wide receiver one in this class. That's going to bring me over to Drake London, who I've had some concern with. And it's not just Drake London, right? It's Kyle Pitts too. But I didn't plan on bringing Kyle Pitts into the segment, but there's nothing you can do about Kyle Pitts right now. Couldn't trade him. You're not going to trade for him. I mean, Twitter lights on fire anytime someone suggests that Kyle Pitts' value ever will decrease. So I promise his value won't decrease. But Arthur Smith is just head scratching. Isn't even fair. I mean, it's worse. It's double head scratching, if that's a term. So we don't understand why the target share for Kyle Pitts is so low. When Kyle Pitts is injured, we don't understand why the target share for Drake London is so low. I mean, Drake London did lead the team in target share, but it was Zacchaeus who was featured, who was schemed plays for. And it was like Drake London was just thrown on an island, and just Marcus Mariota had to try to go find him. There was nothing special incorporated for what should have been Drake London's big breakout game. So Drake London's been a concern. I don't think you really knock him down, because the only player that you could foreseeably put ahead of him, which I do have Jameson Williams ahead of Drake London. I always have, but it's razor thin between Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, and Drake London. Put them in any order you want, and I respect it, right? So, yes, I've had Drake London at 3, but you can't drop him. You're going to drop him below Burks, who's hurt now and had all that negative offseason buzz. I mean, Burks is 4th, but you really can't drop Drake London behind him. So you're just kind of stuck where you have this great wide receiver class that's just, for one reason or another, not really getting to make full of their opportunity, meet their potential. So with Drake London, it's just another thing where you're going to have to be patient. He and Pitts. I mean, Arthur Smith, it probably isn't getting fired anytime soon. He just started, right? So we're hoping that he can figure it out. and get things done with two very, very talented players in Kyle Pitts and Drake London. There's going to be a lot to be said in the Kyle Pitts war in the weeks to come, but that's going to be interesting to watch go down as somebody who's always stayed on the fence. Hey, I love Kyle Pitts. I think he's fantastic. He's a unicorn, if that's fair to say, but his value was always just a little out of my range. So I never had Kyle Pitts on any teams. So I just get to sit back and just watch it all burn down. So that's going to lead us into the conversation about the Seattle Seahawks running back room. Tough situation. But to be honest, Ken Walker's value was always baked into his value, and it's very unfortunate for Rashad Penny to go down and lose the season to injury after looking so great last week. He's shown that he is a quality running back in the league, but what he has not shown is that he has the ability to stay healthy. Now, this is a fluke injury. I mean, it's not soft tissue. It's not like, hey, the guy doesn't take care of his body. He's getting hamstrings injuries all the time. Tearing ligaments, anything like that. I mean, you break a fibula, you play football, you break things. So it's not fair. I'm already envisioning all of the injury prone labels. Like, yes, Rashad Penny has probably been one of the few players that deserves the injury prone label. However, you cannot help breaking your leg. Okay. So Rashad Penny, probably worth still throwing a third at somebody for him if you could trade just a third to get him or something like that, because he's still under contract next year. It's a 2-year contract with the Seattle Seahawks, and the roles are just going to be reversed next year, where even in best ball, Ken Walker was a solid pick, because if something was supposed to happen to Rashad Penny, then Kenneth Walker is getting the full backfield and a team that loves to run the football, which has been a little weird because actually they're passing pretty well. But next season, it's going to be the opposite. Kenneth Walker is going to be the lead back, but Rashad Penny is going to be right there if anything happens to Kenneth Walker. So he's still going to maintain value, still worth probably a third-round pick. If anyone's asking for more than that, then it's just not worth it. But if anybody's trying to just get whatever they can for Rashad Penny, I do not mind sending a third. Now on to Ken Walker, who came back from injury 2 weeks ago, kind of eased his way back in, and then last week got a good, solid workload, both before and after Rashad Penny's injury. So Kenneth Walker has that long touchdown, looks fantastic, but we all knew that already, right? He was the 102 in most leagues. He was certainly my 102. So I had Breece Hall, then Ken Walker, then all the wide receivers pretty much in a long run before we got to James Cook towards the end of the first round. So Kenneth Walker deserved to be where he was, but we don't need to double count. There's no real why are we adding value to Ken Walker? One, it was already baked into his value that Rashad Penny could get hurt. Two, he was already the 102 in rookie drafts. So what are you going to do? What are you going to add? I mean, you're going to send 223 first? No. I mean, absolutely not. If anybody wants to offer that, then you trade Kenneth Walker, obviously. But the fact that he's the lead back right now is great, but it should have already kind of been in his value. I mean, maybe he gets a little bump because it came to fruition, but we already valued him there because we knew that Rashad Penny's probably not going to finish the season because he never has. So I'm not – if it's redraft, which is not this show, 100% of your fab goes to Kenneth Walker. Easily done. Don't even think about it the rest of the year. Be happy you have Kenneth Walker. And 100% probably doesn't even get you there because everyone's going to pay 100%. So if he was on your waivers already, which it would have had to been a shallow league anyways, but if he was on your waivers, then it's just going to come down to waiver order anyways because everyone's going to bid 100% of the fab. But back to Dynasty, Kenneth Walker in Dynasty, you're happy if you have him. You're happy to trade him if you can get added value, just because if people want to pay extra for what we already thought was probably going to happen, then you probably do that reluctantly, just like I reluctantly traded Breece Hall. You're probably just happy you have him and you're not trading for him because people are going to ask for the moon and you just can't give that to them when you already knew that this was probably going to be in the card. So Kenneth Walker is going to get a big boost in rankings just because we're going to see we're going to see what he's capable of earlier in his career. And just as I mentioned with those running backs, you only get about 4 years with them, right? So the earlier that they can start producing, the better. So in that sense, you get a little bit extra value. You pay maybe a little bit more because now we're going to get 3.75 years out of Kenneth Walker's first contract instead of what probably would have been 3 in an offseason of speculation because Rashad Penny was going to be there. So that's where the extra value comes from, but it doesn't come from just Kenneth Walker being the name, the starter due to injury. We kind of knew that was probably going to happen. Before I get to the last two wide receivers, what I do want to talk about is the Footballguys newsletter that will come straight to your email from Joe Bryant. Also contributions from Cecil Lammy and Sigmund Bloom. They're going to get you right with all the news and notes from around the league, and you're not going to have the Sleeper app and the ESPN and all that in one spot, all the great apps or whatever. You don't need 50 million alerts throughout the day. You need one email that breaks it all down for you. You take your 5 minutes, you read through the email, and you're good to go. You've got it all. And then Chris and I will take some tidbits from that are Dynasty relevant, and we will put it into this show for you. Next is George Pickens, who's been a complete, just a grown man playing with boys, right? You saw in the preseason, he was bodying corners, and it's like, okay, it's preseason. Whatever. One, stop letting them do that, right? You've seen the film. If you're a cornerback, stop letting them do that. But two, now we're in the regular season, and he's still manhandling corners. And it's not just that now. It's a legitimate target share. It's 2 games with around 8 targets. It's a bit of chemistry with Kenny Pickett, right? The rookie connection. So he does not look out of place. Chase Claypool hasn't done anything to show promise since his rookie year. And I cannot explain that. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's ever since he started calling himself, Mapletron? That he just hasn't been able to live up to his own hype. But for whatever reason, Chase Claypool has left himself very vulnerable to lose the wide receiver 2 position. And I'm not sure he hasn't already. I already value George Pickens higher than Claypool. I think a lot of people already did before we saw anything out of George Pickens. And now it's just kind of, Deontay Johnson got the contract, right? So it's going to be George Pickens and Deontay Johnson show here pretty soon. And we're going to see the snap share kind of flip from being like 80% Chase Claypool to 70% George Pickens. And we'll see that flip to 80% Pickens, 70% Claypool. And both of those players can play inside or outside, so that doesn't really matter. And that's how Steelers wide receivers like to operate. They like to have all of their wide receivers able to play all 3 positions, which George Pickens has already shown that he can. So George Pickens' value should probably go up just because he is in a time warp for his projected, ascension. And you just have to try to catch it on the upswing, right? So this is a time where you just pay up, close your eyes and pay for him. Just trade what you have to trade for him because we can see where this is going, right? And that happens sometimes in Dynasty where it's like things are happening too fast to process. So you just go ahead and get that player on your roster. And it was only last week that I actually traded George Pickens in a Superflex league for Mac Jones. Didn't want to do it. Don't really like Mac Jones' value. I do like George Pickens a lot, but it was like, okay, I could get a young quarterback, and I already regret that, as silly as it, right? So if he's already passing some of the young quarterbacks, he's going to fly into the 3rd round range of startups very quickly. Like by the end of this year, probably valued up there into that 3rd to 4th round startup range, and he's not there yet. So you probably just trade what you have to trade for him. Just get it out of the way and get him on your roster before it's really, really too late. And he has the ability to be in the 2nd round one day. Maybe not first. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 12 player, especially not with the quarterback position, the way that it's working out, the way that Deontay Johnson earns his targets. Maybe Pickens doesn't get that high, but could I see Pickens getting around T. Higgins value one day? I could see that. I could certainly see that. So the last player we're going to talk about is a little bit disappointing in DJ Moore, who we also talked about a few weeks ago. And now DJ Moore has speculation of going to the Bears, which I don't know how much I buy into that, but I do buy that he might get traded, especially since Matt Rule was just fired. So does the team try to keep DJ Moore because they fired Matt Rule because Matt Rule was a big problem? Also, Baker Mayfield's hurt, so he's not going to be starting right now. So could that wound be healed, and DJ Moore decides to stay with the team? I don't know about all that. What I do know is that the writing is on the wall for DJ Moore's value to only descend for the rest of his career, which is super unfortunate for one of the most talented players in the league. He is still very young, but I do not see his production ever meeting the value that we've placed on him for so long. Rightfully so. Fantastic player, first round pick, I think 16th overall, right ahead of the Falcons with Calvin Ridley. So he was placed so high based on his pre-draft evaluation, which was incredible. And he's just never really fallen from our graces, although his surroundings have never improved. DJ Moore has been everything we've asked of him, but his surroundings have never met what they would have required. I mean, he's never had a quarterback that's shown a willingness to really. DJ Moore needs to be over targeted. Never had a quarterback willing to do that. Now he hardly has a quarterback at all. Like I said, Baker Mayfield's injured, and Baker Mayfield's been terrible prior to injury. DJ Moore did a great job holding his tongue when reporters asked him, "Hey, what are these guys saying about you getting open?" DJ, we watch, man. You don't need to say anything, and you didn't say anything because we've seen your target quality is just absolutely. It's actually depressing. So DJ Moore holding his tongue was great, but if he's going to go to a team like the Bears, that would be just Justin Fields is a much better quarterback, but the situation there is just as bad. So what I'm thinking on DJ Moore is I'm probably trying to get a first and just moving on. And I don't know that you can go first anymore. But if there's people who are willing to just give you a 2023 first, you're not going to feel great about it because he is DJ Moore. But your first round pick is going to gain value, like I said at the start of the show. And DJ Moore probably is not. Either he's going to stay with the Panthers and the quarterback situation is going to be terrible. He's going to get a new head coach that might want to clean house. He's going to go to a team that's wide receiver needy that probably is not producing very well. So, for instance, if he goes to the Bears, are we excited about that? Absolutely not. If he goes to the Giants, are we excited? No, we're not. He will not go to the Falcons because they obviously would not trade him inside the division. So there's not a lot of options that we would be excited about DJ Moore going to. And players do tend to gain value when they're traded by just a little bit, or at least people are more willing to trade for him just because their name is in the news. So if DJ Moore does get traded, you might want to take that opportunity to go ahead and just toss out there, hey, if anybody just gives me any random first, let's make this swap. So it's going to be sad. It's going to be ripping a Band-Aid off, but I do recommend trying to take a first, maybe get a little extra on top if you can, get as much as you can. But it's going to be very, very difficult. Not impossible, but very, very difficult for DJ Moore to increase value throughout the rest of his career. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for coming out. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Remember, our show is not on the Audible feed, so if you've been missing it in your Spotify feed or anything like that, we are under our own feed, so check that out. Please subscribe there, leave reviews there, and we will catch y'all next week. Peace.